Welcome back to Telltale and a discussion of a short series, a trilogy of shorter works. The first one was a short story and followed up by two novelettes. The overall series is generally given the name of Meg the Priestess series because Meg the Priestess is the main character of the series. And the stories were written by an author named Nelson S. Bond. Bond is not all that well remembered. You don't hear much of him anymore. But he was part of the generation. He started writing at the same time as the other Golden Age writers like Isaac Asimov, A. Van Vogt, L. Sprague de Camp, Robert Heinlein. They all started about the same time as Nelson S. Bond. He published his first story in 1937, and he kept writing science fiction for about 20 years, kind of falling off mostly after 1958. He wrote a little bit after that, but not much. Definitely not enough to make a living off of. In the 1940s, he was mostly affiliated with Fantastic Adventures magazine. Published a lot of his work with that magazine. I'm not sure I could call out one of his stories as being really, really famous or a classic. I don't think he ever made that level of impact with any of his stories, but he wrote some good stuff from what little I've read of his work and from rereading the Meg the Priestess stories. Now, the Meg the Priestess stories were about Meg, who is a priestess, and she is part of a tribe. The setting is the 35th century, long after World War III. Maybe an extended World War II. It's hard. The story was published in 1939, the first of them, which is titled The Priestess Who Rebelled. It was published in the October 1939 Amazing Stories. It's also has an alternate title of Pilgrimage, which is probably how it's better known. That's the way it's anthologized in the great science fiction stories, which is what brought me to this. I've been rereading this whole book, and I'm up to The Priestess Who Rebelled. Anyway, it was published in Amazing Stories. The second story in the series, the Judging of the Priestess, was then published in the April 1940 Fantastic Adventures. And then the final story in the trilogy is called Magic City, and that was actually published in the February 1941 issue of Astounding, which is kind of unusual. Usually when an author is writing a series, he'll publish it all in the same magazine back then. Not 100%, but for the most part, you'll see all the stories of a particular series or a particular character will all be published in the same magazine. So this one jumped around a lot. Of course, Fantastic Adventures is a companion magazine to Amazing Stories, so it's the same editor, same publisher, but still, it is a different magazine from Amazing. So anyway, back to the synopsis. You have an all-out war being fought by men, and it goes on for a long time and really thins the population and tears up the world, is destroying civilization. And the women are just tired of this. Because if you remember, during World War II, the women were mostly at home working in the factories, making the bombs, making the airplanes and such. Bond kind of extrapolates from this, going that as this war goes on too long, the women get fed up and they basically just kick the men out and take over. So you have this matriarchal society that develops where the men, there are two types of men. There's men that are basically worthless that hang around to be used as studs. And then there's the wild men that are out. They're not part of the tribes. They're off on their own in the forests, and they tend to attack pretty easily. So the tribe is a matriarchal society that is led by the mother, who the mother is knowledgeable of all the secrets. She knows how to write, she knows how to do math, and she has access to books, and she goes on a pilgrimage, which is where the alternate title to the first story comes from. Goes on a pilgrimage to learn the secrets. And the secrets are of course, that the world used to be male-centric and had all these great cities and such. And this is the 35th century. It's a long time from now. A lot of that has been lost. The mothers keep this information alive, but they don't really share it with the rest of the tribe. So the rest of the tribe is clueless to all these facts. And so the whole series is about Meg. She goes on her pilgrimage to become the mother. She comes back and she becomes the mother, but she kind of overturns their society, because their society saw men as being basically worthless. So women did not really mate with men. There were certain women that would get impregnated, but that's all they had to do with men, is that, having a child, and then the man was of no use to them. So they didn't get married, they didn't mate for life, stuff like that. Meg learns that that's the way it used to be, and she meets a man that she really likes, and so she comes back and she reveals the secrets and overturns society. That's the first story. The second story in the trilogy is kind of embarrassing. It's kind of standard pulp adventure, and it's a bit racist towards Asians. It's enjoyable enough if you overlook the fact and remind yourself that it was written in 1940. But I almost wish it hadn't been written and you just had the first and the third story, because those stories are amazing. The third story, they beat off the invasion of what they call the Japcans from Mexico. It's Japanese that came to Mexico and intermingled with the Mexicans, and now they're called Japcans. Anyway, they beat off the invasion of the Japcans, and now Meg wants to go and defeat a god that is responsible for death, and there's a city of death she wants to travel to try to face him and beat him, because she had seen a young girl get sick and die. So she and her spouse, they go off on an adventure traveling to this city. And of course, this brings more revelations about their world. I'm not going to spoil it from there, because it's worth reading. It really is. Even if you skip the second story about the Japcans, read the first and third. They are amazing stories. What I specifically love about these stories is how Bond saw the things we take for granted. Our society, our ethics, our religion, our science, things that we, our place names, things like the Statue of Liberty, how we take those for granted and we know what they're all about. But by the 35th century, these things have become twisted. So you no longer have the United States of America. They think it was always called Tisothy. because they have passed down a song that goes, "My country, 'tis of thee." So they think the whole country is called "'tis of thee," and they don't understand that no, that's not what the song is meaning. That's not what it's trying to say. Bond throws a lot of that kind of thing in, and some of it even aims at religion. And he does some very daring things here. For this, got to keep reminding yourself, this is 1940, and he has a strong female character. He takes a lot of digs at men. He takes a lot of digs at our society. The women can't imagine why they would want to be married to a man, why they would need men, and men were just these evil things. Reminds me a lot of feminists today, how they talk. And this in 1940, a man is writing this story like this with a strong female character, putting men as second to women, and women have the real power in this society, and then playing with all these other accepted things like religion and twisting them through the misunderstandings of time, but twisting them in a way that they kind of become satirical, kind of become funny. There's a lot of subtlety going on here that is brilliant, in my opinion. Deserves to be better known, deserves to be more widely read. This is true classics of science fiction, and I haven't read a lot of Bond's work, but I want to. I kind of think this is going to be his standout work. So recommend it, top tails, except for that middle one. Maybe skip that one. But books I read it in, of course, great science fiction stories. This is essential anthology. You must get it. The middle story, of course, hasn't been anthologized much because why? But it is still available. What I'm holding up here is not the original Fantastic Adventures. It's a facsimile reproduction by a company called Pulp Tales Press, and they do an exact reproduction of the magazine, ads and all. The editor's comments, the original illustrations. There's a very cool Frank R. Paul illustration, if you can see that. The original magazine, and it's not published like the pulp magazines were on really cheap, crappy acidic paper. I don't know, the paper might have acid to it, but it's got a really nice cardstock cover, glossy. This is gonna hold up for a while. This is, for what it is, this is quality printing. And so I'm very impressed with that. Not so impressed with the story, but I am impressed with the printing from Pulp Tales Press. I would recommend, if you're looking for an old pulp magazine and you don't have hundreds of dollars to spend on something that you're going to be afraid to open up, that's the way to go. Get them through there. And then the third story, Magic City, this is volume 2 of a treasury of great science fiction, edited by Anthony Boucher. This is a classic science fiction anthology. And again, one of those must-have anthologies for a complete science fiction collection. Originally published in 2 volumes in 1959. I've got these first editions that are in beautiful shape. I've seen any number of decent copies, usually lacking the dust cover, but still in really good condition, that you can get in resale stores and places like Half Price Books. It's around. You can get this anthology. It's not that hard, and not that expensive either, to get a nice copy of it. So I would suggest that you look that up. It's got a lot of other, let me say, this is the second volume, and in the second volume you've got a lot of other great science fiction stories. You've got the entire novel Brainwave by Poul Anderson, the entire novel of The Stars, My Destination by Alfred Bester. You got stories by Mildred Klingerman, Henry Kuttner, George O. Smith, Judith Merrill, Malcolm Jamison, The Man Who Sold the Moon by Robert Heinlein, The Other Side of the Sky by Arthur C. Clarke, of course, Magic City by Nelson S. Bond, all in this volume 2. And volume 1 likewise has some just amazing, great science fiction in it. Well worth tracking down and getting a copy. With that, I will wrap this up and say like us, subscribe to us, come back and watch more of these videos. I'll have more like this. I've got more Philip K. Dick short stories coming up. I'm working on and reading Harrow the Ninth still. I'm also reading Weave World and Needful Things by Stephen King is my latest buddy read with Samantha. So a lot of great things coming up. And of course, check us out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So, see you in the next video.